Hey guys, Allie here from Young, Dumb, and Sober, the channel where I try to convince you that getting fucked up is lame and getting sober is badass. So as some of you might know, I'm doing a 4-part series with Amy from Thrive in Recovery with Amy. She's a trauma-informed sober relationship expert. This video is going to be part 3 where Amy and I discuss all things early recovery, especially dating in early recovery, which was a big topic for me. And I know it's a topic that other people wonder about when they're in early sobriety, whether or not it's okay to date, how you navigate situations like that. Do me a favor and subscribe to Young, Dumb, and Sober to help me spread the message that sobriety is fun. Hit the bell so you get notifications every time I upload new content, meaning every time I also upload a new video in the series with Amy. Like this video, share it with a couple of your friends if you feel like they might get something out of it. And with that, here is my 3rd conversation with Amy. Hello, Miss Amy.
Hey girl, great to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
I feel like we're in a flow now.
Yeah.
Stage 3.
Yeah, we're flowing at this point. Like it's just natural. Because every conversation kind of leads into the next one, and then if you go back to them, they circle back to the first one. So it's all very symbiotic. I really like it.
What I'm hearing from people that have contacted me through your community and then just in general is that there truly isn't a lot of information out there.
No.
Yeah, and if it is, it's very like, this is exactly how you do it, and this is very rigid, and I don't like rigidity. No, thank you.
Yeah, me neither. So even when I was looking into like a couple of topics for this video, which is going to be about dating in early sobriety and kind of tips for dating in early sobriety and things like that, all of it was the same. It was just like parroted by the last article and the last article, and there was so few resources that were giving any kind of like alternative perspective or really answering the questions that I were seeing from actual people that I'm just like,
I agree 100%. And it's so interesting because you're so right. It's with all due respect to marketing and advertising out there, so many of the articles on it are just for SEO to lead them to treatment centers or to lead them to marketing and advertising. So when people are reading these articles, it's really kind of like infomercials for treatment centers instead of like 2 freaking real human beings who I relapsed so many times over relationships in early sobriety.
Right.
So we have like firsthand experience of what this looks like, feels like, tastes like, smells like.
Yeah.
And that to me is valuable.
Yes, 100%. I think other people will find it valuable as well. And it's really funny that you say that because now that I'm thinking back, I'm pretty sure the sites that I saw were all attached directly to a treatment or a rehab center. So it's like, okay, where is this information coming from? And they have any other motives? You know, these are questions that we need to kind of ask ourselves, but ones that we probably don't, especially when we're so hungry for information and we just want to know something. It's like, somebody validate the fact that I need to know this. Somebody validate that they're going through something that I've gone through. Like, that's why we're having these conversations, which is just awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love what you just said, because often these articles are coming from family members or from people who want it to look like that for you. Instead of someone coming back to themselves and going, what is a healthy relationship, period? Because if it wasn't mirrored to us from our primary caregivers or our friends or any mentor couples in our life, then we just don't know.
No.
And so it is the blind leading the blind.
Yes. And now we're here to help people see things.
Exactly. That's so beautiful.
Very profound. So in terms of like early recovery in general, like it's kind of hard to define because I mean, for me, all right, I'm technically I'm like 4 years sober. I went out for a day and I still started my day count over. So we can say that I'm 3 years or 4 years, whatever. But the point is that I still kind of consider myself to be early recovery because I like to keep that beginner's mindset. Like I don't, denounce the knowledge or the experience that I've gained, but I also like to, like we've spoke about in the past, to remain like teachable. I also wouldn't say that I'm so much in early recovery that I wouldn't be able to, for instance, have a healthy relationship with proper boundaries and things like that. So how can we really define early sobriety or early recovery when it's so subjective?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And we've talked about this over the last couple of episodes. And so I really want to reiterate this. There's so much conditioning based on the DSM-5 and based on the recovery support groups that are out there.
Yes.
And the conditioning is meant to create a container for people to live in and feel comfortable in.
Right.
It's not, but they're not meant to help people go inward and make definitions. So what I just heard you say is you consider yourself to be in early recovery because you choose to have a beginner's mindset one moment at a time for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Me too. So yeah, like, someone's like, you're a master at this. And I'm like, not so much, because I'm committed to continuing to learn. I don't know what I don't know. So through DSM standards, through early recovery support group standards, it's between 3 months and 12 months.
Right.
And that's like the definition that we're conditioned to.
Right. From a literal time standpoint.
Right. Everything else is completely subjective.
Yes.
And listen, the brain needs time to heal. Like there is science to some of this, like the brain, the body, the spiritual being, the energy body, all the things that we've talked about in the last two things, it needs time to heal for sure. And behaviors and patterns that we've had from early childhood or from intergenerational trauma that's happened, like you're gonna be healing that for the rest of the time you're in this body, and whoever you pass it on to. So the more committed you are to having a beginner's mindset, the healthier relationships are gonna be.
Yes, period. Love that.
I started my journey in 2014 or late 2013, I think was the first time I detoxed. And I consider that like when I started to get sober.
Yes.
But to stay stopped, it took me some time.
Absolutely.
And if I just considered myself to be in early recovery that whole time and didn't take risks and didn't try new things, then I would have never grown and transformed. And listen, people die every day from taking risks in all kinds of ways. And we emotionally die sometimes, it's just like, but we can also heal and, just experience a whole new level of freedom that just doesn't have to be confined to definition and labels.
Yes. 100%. I think it's kind of like, if you can say that you don't know everything about something, there's like a level of humility to that that's like super, super helpful just to like live life in general, but especially when it comes to sobriety. And that's kind of like, that goes off of like, you don't necessarily need to trust or believe people what they say just because they have 35 years of sobriety. Like that does not make them an authority on you or your recovery or your early recovery or whatever it might be. And I just want to like throw that out there because I know so many times in the beginning, and I see it a lot on, I have this thing with sober meme pages. It's like a budding resentment that I really need to get in check because they push a lot of unhealthy and negative ideas out, like things about newcomers not having any wisdom and people who are just getting sober, not like their shares not being as worthy as an old timer or things like that. And it's like, or if somebody just relapsed, what they have to say doesn't matter. And that's not true. Like you were just saying, like you relapsed and came back. That wisdom that you learned, that didn't go away. Your opinion is just as valid as somebody who's been sober for however long. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Like we share that feeling. I don't even go to those things because I'm like, that is conditioning. That is keeping people in shame and guilt and playing small. Yes. And it's trauma bonding.
Yes.
Because there's 72 comments about it and everyone is bonding over staying small.
And then one person who says something and they get attack. Yes. And they attack them. And I'm like, this poor person, like, you have the balls to even say what you were gonna say. Like, I wish I could do that, but like, come on, like, let it, like, give this person a break. Like, they're just saying an opinion that's different than yours, you know? And maybe I'm going off topic, but that just bothers the hell out of me.
Well, you're not. And let's pull it into the reality. So it's so good because people have an idea of what a relationship should look like based on conditioning like that. And if you're over here, I mean, the LGBTQ plus community is a perfect example of that. You know, being in San Francisco that whole time and watching it change over the 17 years that I was just there,
Right.
you know, it's just like, it's supposed to be like this. Well, no, we're going to make it like this because this is how I freaking felt in my body the whole time.
Right.
And as conscious, sober women right here, right now, like, I get to define what my relationship looks like. And it doesn't look like what my parents' relationship look like or what my friends' relationships look like. Like, I have a whole different idea of how I want to be in relationship. And I tried to force it. And what did that do? It led me to sober memes that like made me feel like shit about myself because I'm like, well, I totally did that. And,
Right.
and like, I can either agree with that so that people will like me. But here's the thing, when you do your deep healing work and you do your trauma work, then you're just like, fuck it. I don't need these people to like me. And all things you ingest matter. So I'm not going to ingest that stuff because I don't want to bond with people over trauma instead of me creating whatever I want. It's art. Relationships are art.
Beautiful. Yes, they absolutely are. I've started blocking some of those pages just so I can just, like, why am I allowing myself to get activated by this stuff? I don't even need it on my feed.
Exactly.
You know, sometimes it just gets through anyway, but so there's a lot of, in these memes, in the rooms, just from, you know, these like secretly, you know, advertising infomercials on the internet, there's these things that they kind of tell us about dating and early recovery. And I think there are nuggets of truth to some of them, and early recovery in general. Like, I remember people always saying, like, early recovery sucks. It's awful. It's the worst thing. And like, yeah, it was hard. It was challenging, but I think that it's important with like the words we use to describe our experience in early recovery can very well have an impact on how people who are in early recovery now are looking at it and are like, well, yeah, you're right. This does fucking suck. This is awful. I feel like shit. But what happens when you start seeing people who are being like, you know, I'm not on this pink cloud. I'm just in a place of serenity and like loving presence, and I'm enjoying myself, and I don't think it's going to go away, and like just kind of like enjoying the process despite it being hard.
Yeah.
Oh
gosh. I mean, and that's another thing. Like, is it a pink cloud, or is it that you figured out how to cultivate your internal pharmacy to experience more of these chemicals on a sustainable long-term basis, right? So because I've done so much work in my microbiome, like, I was already on that kick. Like, I knew how to feed myself in a way that I could produce these chemicals on my own. And I have chose to stay away from medication most of my life. Although doctors gave it to me and I tried to take it to cure me, but it just didn't ever work for me. So the pink cloud, again, is something to keep us small. And if you'll notice that, like, people will say like, oh, whatever, you're just on the pink cloud. That's like, okay. And like, why can't this be something that I live like forever? Why can't I experience the emotional freedom and the emotional flexibility to do this thing moment to moment and know how to get back to this feeling?
Yeah.
Because that's freedom.
Yeah.
It's totally freedom. And it doesn't mean that there, again, just like we talked about last time, like the chemicals, the vasopressin, the oxytocin, the serotonin, the dopamine, all the things that like, woo, yeah, like that we get from orgasm and sex and connection, like that does wear off out of us at a certain amount of time. But because we know about the biology and the chemistry of that, then we find ways to recreate that. And that's how we have long-term successful relationships.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you recreate it. in different ways. And you can be on the pink cloud, and people roll their eyes and get annoyed at couples that can do that only because maybe they have a desire to have that too, and they don't know how to do that.
Right.
And, you know, I get so passionate about this because it's that keeping other people small so you feel comfortable in your own skin.
Oh, I hate it.
Yeah. And it happens in relationships all over the world, moment to moment. Friendships, parents and children, like every kind of relationship. Absolutely. And it's like, ouch, why don't you want me to be big? And it's all because they're afraid they're not going to get the love back.
Right. Which is, it's sad. It sucks. Just kind of having to tap into like that compassion and understand where the other person is coming from. And it's hard for me to do that without it immediately having that first trigger response of like, God, you're pissing me off. Like, why are you doing that? But it's like, hurt people. Not that that's an excuse, but you know, if you're going out of your way to try and make someone feel small, then you probably feel small.
Yeah. And that's why I get so passionate about this, because it's like, if we as a sober community really work and have fun doing it at having healthy sober relationships, like we can change the stigma, the reputation, the idea of what it's like.
Yes. And
it literally will slow down the generational trauma that happens. It literally will change like the number of kids in that family line that choose coping mechanisms like this. You know, maybe they'll choose a higher level coping mechanism instead of alcohol or heroin or whatever.
Right.
You know, it's such an important conversation.
Yeah, I mean, like if it was up to me, the whole recovery spectrum, or at least just a large chunk of it, would just be like revamped. Even early recovery, just the way we look at it, just revamped. And like one of the things that I wanted to talk about with you is like, how can we have fun in early recovery? Because that's possible. That's totally 100% possible. You don't have to like just be sitting at home and being like, I must isolate myself and stay away from anything so I don't see something that looks like a drug. And like, you don't need to do any of that. Like there are ways that you can still enhance your life and have fun and enjoy your early sobriety, instead of like sticking to this idea of like, it sucks, you know, and the only place I can go is a young people's meeting on a Friday night. Like you have more options.
Yeah, you totally do. So that's such a great question. It all comes back to the willingness and the humility of going back to those basics with yourself. Right. So if you are in early recovery and you're listening right now, and then we're also in this place where we can't move about like we did before 5 months ago. Yeah. Well, and it's a great time to do this evaluation. So it's the same thing with choosing a partner. I don't feel like people put enough time and energy into exploring what makes them feel good. And so they go out there and they just start grabbing at everything instead of just taking 5 minutes every day to be like, ooh, I like it when I have that feeling. And I get that from reading a book or from connecting with a friend on FaceTime or from hearing the ding of I have a message from on my dating app or whatever. You know, it's like, oh, that feels good. Now, how can I recreate that feeling over and over again? Because that's fun. It feels good. Right. We get so attached to those lower level, lower vibration feelings that it's like, I'm going to listen to sad music all day long. I'm going to, talk to everyone in the recovery community who's in the same boat that I am. Going to retell the same old stories. Yep. And the first step to this is define what fun is to you. Yes. And one of the early kind of effects of especially when you're first detoxing is something we call anhedonia, where you're just like, I don't fucking care about anything.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. And it literally shuts your mind down from being able to access those parts of you that can sequence and that can think like, yeah, that's right, I used to like this. Right. So that's when it's really important to receive support and to use creative outlets.
Yes.
So creative outlets are how we kind of wake that part of ourselves back up, you know, movement and somatics and yoga and the things that we were talking about last time.
Yes.
So important, but also just like coloring.
Yes.
And, you know, just the reason we have art therapy is for a reason. It opens up those parts of the brain that have shut down. And then it helps you realize, like, holy shit, there's this whole part of me that I've just kept on lockdown.
Right.
And those are the fun things we can do. Yeah.
Like one of my biggest suggestions have been to people who are just getting into sobriety is like, if you're in that place, right, where you can't connect with what you're finding fun right now because it's just not possible, think back to what you found fun as a kid. Like, were you that person that was constantly doodling during class? Like, did you used to write little fictional stories? Like, were you the person who was like out there like hula hooping? Go get a hula hoop. Like, go do these things. Like, if it brought you joy as a child, there's a good chance that it'll bring you joy as an adult. And like, there may be ways now that you can participate in that same activity in a way that is more evolved or more mature or more adult. Even if the you right now can't access that, like, think of like the little you who definitely was more open to doing those types of activities without, you know, overthinking it into the ground. And there's so many different creative outlets out there, just like dancing, singing, like drawing, writing, doing fucking musical theater. I don't know, I guess that's singing and dancing together, but
and it's so important. And what you just said is such a great segue into like, why does it feel so hard to do that? Right? So connecting with our inner child might not be safe because maybe if you're listening right now, you had a lot of emotional trauma growing up. Like, people just made you feel small, didn't hold space for your needs. Maybe there was physical trauma, maybe there was substance misuse in your family. Like, there could have been all of these things that happen. Right. So going back to the childhood without support feels hard. Right. So again, it's writing this down or just getting clear and then saying, like, you know, from someone you trust, from a guide that's been there, to say like, hey, I want to explore hula hooping again. I want to like freaking put on a play for our home group, I don't know, and do it on Zoom or Crowdcast or something. Right. You know, however, I know I'm going to access parts of me that might also bring up some pain. Yeah. And so we, you know, in order to experience intense joy, we have to be willing to experience intense pain.
That's the quote I'm taking. That's the quote I'm taking for next
year. Yeah. I mean, I've heard it from one of my mentors or teachers or yogic philosophies somewhere, but it's so true. Yeah. You know, like, I'm exploring parts of myself right now that are allowing me to play with old relationships, because I'm just like, I'm fucking confident in what I know. And I feel safe to talk to people that I used to have sex with. Right. And be like, nah. Like, I don't know, like, let's have a conversation. Like, what are you trying to like hit on me right now? Like, let's talk about this. And it's fun. Right. But that took building confidence and being playful about it and literally laughing with the people like we are now. Right. I was just like, this is funny. Yeah. And like, dang, we're still so attracted to each other. Like, it's fun.
Sometimes we don't need to take ourselves so seriously either.
Oh gosh, I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah. Why do we take it so seriously? It's weird. Right. You know, it's funny. It's like the things that happen underneath the covers or, you know, in the kitchen, or the noises that we make and that our bodies make. It's all so weird and funny. Yeah. And we take it so seriously because we're afraid of judgment.
And I mean, you know, there's a lot of truth to that, like, old 12, I don't know if it's actually originated in 12 step, but to wear your life like a loose garment, you know, I just kind of, I love that. Yeah. You need to let it restrict you or feel like it's restricting you.
I love loose garments.
Or no garments, that's fine too. Exactly. So that's great. I'm so glad that you brought that up, that you said, like, you know, yes, it's perfectly acceptable to go back into that childhood place and look for those fun things, but do it responsibly and do it alongside somebody who can be holding your hand in a sense and making sure that if you're hitting any hard points that you have support and guidance, and that's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. And just a quick personal story. That's the whole reason that I got sober, because I went to my original incident with my birth mom without a support network.
Me too.
And with my little girl in tow.
Yeah.
And I just got mutilated,
right.
you know, and it wasn't the most responsible thing for me to do. But then what did I do? I sought everybody outside of me to try to, you know, fix me by having sex, by, you know, drinking, drugging, all the things like, like this is gonna make it go away.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I mean, I have like very, you know, firsthand experience with what it looks like to kind of do that inner child work without a really great support and guide.
Yeah. You'll get there, maybe not in one piece, and it'll take a lot longer and it'll probably be a lot more painful.
Yeah, it was pretty fucking painful.
Yeah, same here. You know, in the beginning I've been through so many therapists. I'm like the poster child for therapy, but I've been through so many, and a couple of them were just like bad eggs, you know, and it actually made that journey with the inner child a little bit more difficult for me because it brought up more stuff. Like it recreated that parental dynamic that hurt me in the first place. So it's just kind of like, you need to find somebody that you trust too, somebody who really can bring you through it in a safe way, which again kind of comes back to what you're saying about sitting and thinking about what you need, you know, like, what am I looking for in a guide? What am I looking for in a person? Do I just want somebody who I see at a meeting every once in a while and that's the only thing I have in common with them? Do I want somebody who's been through this? Do I want somebody who has a bunch of letters before their name? Like, what makes you feel comfortable, you know?
Yeah. And to interview them. You know, as a trauma-informed coach that does all of this work with people, I tell people, like, you know what? I don't think I'm the right fit for you. And here's some referrals. It's the responsible thing to do.
Right.
Or like, you know, for the type of work that I know that I would lead you through, maybe it's not time just yet. Maybe do some more of this basic stuff.
Right.
And that, you know, and that's just, again, the responsible thing to do. So if anyone is out there telling me that they can like fix you or, you know, solve all your problems, like, go the other way.
yeah. Run very far. So how about like urges and early recovery? Because, you know, urges come, I think, no matter what. They come, they go. It's just about kind of like riding the wave for me. But I think people are very scared of feeling urges in early recovery. I know I was, because I didn't trust myself yet. So I was afraid that as soon as I felt an urge, I was going to immediately act on it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so urges come in many different shapes and forms and sizes and all kinds of different things. So having an urge never stops. Like, it's just a human condition. It's not unique to us. It's that if we let it go too long without putting a voice to it, name it and claim it and just be like, wow, like I really want something outside of me to soothe me. And again, giving it to a safe person. Yeah. Being scared of it is, in my opinion, especially from that, you know, somatic approach, if I'm scared of something and I try to push it down or make it wrong, it's the worst thing that I can do for my nervous system. Right. It's the worst thing I can do I will like binge on something if I do that. Yeah. So instead I'm like, how can I be curious? Right. How can I investigate this urge? Because sometimes it's like an urge to like run up and down my hill like 5 times. And sometimes it's an urge to like masturbate or have sex or have orgasm. Sometimes it's an urge to like, I don't know, like eat the whole thing of almond butter. Like, and that's all okay, but there's something underneath there. Yeah. And if you're, like you said, have that beginner's mindset and you're willing to, and you can be like, fuck, something's really up.
Yeah, despite my millennial status, I'm really pretty technologically Advanced. So, okay, this is our follower question that we're going to start with. Will it compromise my sobriety? And this particular person is 5 months into their recovery.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Oh, it's such a great question. And, we've talked a little bit about all of the kind of myths and things that are out there and all of the conditioning that's out there in the world. So, 5 months in, things are starting to shift in the brain and the body.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you haven't learned how to trust your intuition and trust yourself first. So I just want to honor that this is a great question and something that so many people ask, and that you're pausing, listener and watcher and all the people, that you're pausing to just question it is a really good sign. So you're headed in the right direction. You're not just reacting, you're responding, you're asking for support. And this is going to go back to that level of trust that you have with yourself, because the short answer is, I don't know. You know the best. Right? Like whoever it is out there, I waited for 6 months before, on the last time that I was doing it again, before I even reached out to someone who I'd already had a history with.
Right.
Because I was just like, ooh, like this I've taken myself out over this person in the past because I didn't trust myself.
Yeah.
So it really goes back to that trusting. And will it interrupt your recovery? Yes. And here's the thing, we recover together. This is not separate. So, I talk to so many people that isolate themselves for 3 to 7 to 10 years without dating and without having sex. And I'm like, whoa. Like now there's a whole different set of circumstances. There's a whole different trauma response. And, I work with people in that trauma response as well. So the short answer is like, ask for a lot of support. Yeah, exactly.
Totally. And I'm glad that you validated the fact that that's such a good question, because it really does just say a lot about the person who's asking it. The fact that they even had the ability to say, hey, I don't want to compromise my recovery, at least not in like a, a negative way. So that's pretty great, because I know when I started, I was just like, I don't want to compromise my recovery. However, I'm going to do this anyway,
Totally.
Like, I wasn't asking people. I was just like acting.
Yeah, so that reactive thing. Just this morning I received a message from someone on Facebook who's an old timer, considered like someone has a lot of recovery, over 10 years.
Yeah.
And this person still has no idea about relationships and dating. Yeah. And it was just so interesting because, asking these questions at 5 months, you're on the right path. Go, continue to respond, continue to stay curious, keep that curious hat on, and enjoy the ride.
Absolutely. And I don't know how I cannot go that long without any kind of intimacy. That's a lot for me. So the second question we have is how to deal with the selfishness and negativity of dating someone in early recovery. And now this can go one of two ways. And I'm looking at it from the selfishness and negativity that they see in themselves as somebody is in early recovery, or the selfishness and negativity they see in their partner who might be in early recovery. So maybe we can like touch on both.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is where I get all freaking fired up, because I'm like, what the fuck is selfish and negativity?
Yeah.
Like, yes, whenever we're making a choice to change, there's going to be some frustration. There's going to be some like grieving. There's going to be some just changes in the body and the central nervous system and the whole thing.
Yeah, discomfort.
Exactly. And why do we have to call it selfishness and negativity?
Right.
So my first invitation is like, is it selfish and negativity, or has the world told you that?
Yeah.
Right. And then there's such a big difference, right? So we've been talking a lot in the last 3, right? Like clear, compassionate communication is and concise is so important. So if you know the 3 C's, yes. And what is one of my clients says, cumulative as well. So work on top of everything. Yeah, I love that. And so if we know that, like, here's our schedule, put it on the refrigerator, I'm going to meetings at these times of the day, it's going to be, 90 minutes with before and after and, fellowship time.
Right.
And I promise you, I'm going to give you those 90 minutes at this time.
Right.
And you schedule it. Like, it doesn't take that much effort. The thing is just like we talked about with 5 months question, we get reactive.
Right.
And then your partner or your old childhood shit is coming up. And then there's 2 little kids like going, hey, why aren't you paying attention to me? Why aren't you paying attention to me? I don't understand. And no one's flying the plane. No one is doing everything. And then you're like, you're negative and selfish. And I watched it on TV. And I read that book that they hand out at the other meeting.
Other meeting, yeah.
And it says that I should expect this because, those books that they hand out at those meetings, they use this language. And I was just like,
sure.
We're setting ourselves up for arguments here.
Right.
So again, it's like, how can we support you, as an audience? Come ask us questions. We're not going anywhere.
For sure.
And to set you up for success before is all about having some clear communication. And you need support to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it kind of goes back to that, just immediately putting people who are in early recovery in this realm of negativity and like they're, hot wires and they're, explosive and like we can't trust them. And it's like, that's not necessarily the case.
It's not. No.
Yeah.
And it's also a card that I watch people in early recovery use all the time, and I don't play it.
Me too.
They're like, oh, well, I'm in early recovery. And I'm like, oh, fuck off. Like, you're also a human being.
Right.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that with so much compassion.
Of course.
But it's just like, we can't use that. What, one of my mentors always says, like, there's a moratorium on our childhood trauma. There's also that on how long we can use that in our recovery.
Yeah, and it stops serving us at a certain point. It's not like a matter of, like, enough is enough, but it's like, at what, don't you want to stop at a certain point to like not have it control you any longer and not feel like it has any power over you?
Exactly.
Third and final question. Is it common to feel insecure or trapped in an existing relationship when your partner isn't sober? That's a really good question.
Yeah. Oh, I get like goosies in those questions because it's so...
The word trapped is very definitive.
Yeah, and it's so common.
Yeah.
No, either with someone who's choosing to live this lifestyle, and then there's a common denominator that I see, and I get this question often, and it's that there's so much I am bad because of the things that I did, and the partner who's still out there doing whatever they're doing to escape themselves uses the you're bad.
Right.
And what I find is so many of the people are reenacting the trauma that they experienced from those formative years.
Right.
Their parent treated them that way, or they saw their parents being treated that way by one another. And so it's just like, oh yeah. And then I can't get out of this relationship. And the number one thing that people always tell me is because it's financial.
Yeah.
And I'm like, bullshit.
Well, that's a card too.
It's a card. 100%. And, like during this time, especially, it's so, because we have shelter in place, it's like we know this, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, where there is more domestic violence than there ever is. And there is a sense of I'm trapped and I can't go anywhere. And it's real. And I have so much compassion and love. And there's so many resources out there that maybe we can include here. Absolutely. Because there could be some emotional abuse. And as we've talked about, that big trauma of, being hit or, all the physical stuff sometimes is easier than the emotional trauma that the partner is just consistently out there. So if you feel trapped, please ask for support, because being trapped is not what we get sober for.
No. It's so much of it is about experiencing freedom, and it's
it's awful to have to go through that feeling of being restricted and limited, especially by another person. So I'll definitely put a bunch of resources in the description here. And like Amy said, like, by all means, feel free to reach out and lean on the support you do have. Get as much support as you need from trusted people and, you know, professionals who have experience in this sort of thing, because you're not alone.
And something I want to add in there too is that we talked a little bit about freedom, and sometimes freedom is scarier than staying stuck. So, you know, I want to really honor that. Wherever you are, it's okay. You know, that's what we're saying here. It's okay wherever you are. And if freedom is like, oh gosh, like it's a black hole kind of, it's like the bush, you're just like, I don't know where to go. Then again, lean in. Right. Because, you know, just between the two of us, we've been through it in different areas, and we continue to seek more of it. Right. So, you know, freedom isn't a one and done deal. It's like continuously having fun, playing, staying curious.
Yeah. I think it's like one of those things that if you build upon it and kind of create a habit of changing it from, we've talked about this in the past too, fear of the unknown to like excitement of the unknown, it gets a little bit easier, or it becomes more natural as it goes on.
That's like
kind of like a muscle you need to.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so that's actually all of the follower questions we have. Thank you so much, Amy, for coming back onto Young, Dumb, and Sober and having this discussion with me. It's been very helpful, and I love the way that the conversation is going. Next week, we're going to be talking about sober sex, so that's a huge topic. I know people are excited to talk about it too, and so am I. Like I said, for the description, you can go to the description in this video for any resources that you need, and also to contact Amy directly. You can also reach out to her on Instagram at Thrive in Recovery with Amy. And do you want to also give them your email address? Is that a way to get contacted?
Yeah, totally. It's hello at regroovin, REGROOVIN, like regroovin your mind. Yeah, .com.
All right, perfect. And I'll also add that into the description so you guys can just click through. Thank you so much for watching. And hopefully we will see you next time around.
Yep.
All right.
Okay guys, that has been my conversation with Amy. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, do me a solid and subscribe to this channel, like this video, share it with anybody you think might get some useful information from it. Make sure to tune in for our 4th and final video. We're gonna talk about sober sex. Yeah, so that should be really good. It's been real, it's been fun, and it's been real fun.